Let's talk Pregabalin, brand name Lyrica. I'm Sophie Charlotte, I have bipolar disorder, and I'm going to be making some videos about my journey and my experience with certain medications. Ones I'm taking now and the ones I've taken previously. For this one I wanted to talk about Pregabalin. So what is Pregabalin used for? It's commonly used for pain, for migraines, and also for anxiety, but that doesn't seem to be that common, and there don't seem to be many accounts online of people using it for it. It first became available in the UK in 2004, and all of the information that I have that isn't my personal experience, I will leave the link for in the description, where it goes through pretty much anything you can think of, whether it be side effects, will it affect weight, sexual side effects, does it interact with alcohol, smoking, illicit substances, dosages, everything, it's all on there. Saying that, what is the usual dose? Now you'd normally start off at 75 milligrams a day, and the dose range tends to be from 150 milligrams to 600 milligrams when it's for anxiety. What are the common side effects? Now there's quite a few, much the same as any other medications you might take for your mental health. Drowsiness, dizziness, blurred vision, eyesight changes, gastrointestinal changes or issues, sexual dysfunction, which, great, dry mouth, discoordination. There's quite a lot, but those are the sort of most common ones. So why was I prescribed Pregabalin? I tried a lot of things for my anxiety over the years and nothing worked. SSRIs didn't work for me, even though we tried so many, which I'll do videos on at some point. They'll be interesting. I had been anxious since I was little. When I was 7, I would go to swimming and ballet on a Saturday morning. I would make my dad take me 45 minutes early because I was anxious I'd be late. I would then be there so early, I would anxious that people thought I was weird for turning up so early, and I would panic what they would think of me. I also, around 17, when my mental health really took a dip, as much as I was depressed, I was also very anxious and got to the stage where I couldn't leave the house, and it made going to school very difficult, and I didn't have a great attendance because of that. I then had a similar dip in 2019, for which I then had self-referred through to services, which I'll get into a later video on my story. And in 2020 it got really bad. Granted, people couldn't really much go anywhere. There wasn't much you could do. You could walk to the shops, you could go for a walk, that was it. But either of those felt like a monumentous task. I didn't want to go anywhere on my own. I didn't want to go anywhere with my boyfriend, even though he'd be there to reassure me. I couldn't do it. I'd be having panic attacks outside, at home, in the shops, in the bath, whilst driving, which luckily my partner was with me at the time, so he could just take over the driving and I could just sit in the passenger seat and cry because I was just exhausted and couldn't handle anything. It was debilitating for me. I had severe social anxiety. I've always been that way. I'm very socially anxious. Not so much now, but I used to be. I would find just everything would make me anxious. I would just cry a lot because I couldn't handle anything, because it was taking over my life. How has it helped me? It has been fantastic for me. I first spoke to my doctor about the potential option of me taking it, and that was in late 2020, I believe. I knew someone who was on it. I'd seen 2 or 3 videos of people talking about it on YouTube, people who sort of spoke openly about their mental health, and I thought it was interesting that they were on that because it's not one I'd heard of. So I did some more reading into that. Naturally, I went and looked on Reddit, and there wasn't much information on there either, apart from people taking it generally for their physical health, for things like pain, which was weird because there didn't seem to be much information on it. But using the website I will put in the description, I found information on it, and I asked my psychiatrist whether it was an option. I went to her with 2 medications, and she said, yes, Pregabalin is one we can look at. Let's put you on that and see how you go on it. So I started on 75 milligrams, and she said to me, if I can tolerate it, to go up to 150, which I did, and that's what I currently take now. For me, I found it to be potent stuff. I don't need that much, and I'm someone who's normally very, very anxious. It has been incredible. I didn't think something would ever tame my anxiety quite like it has. I rarely get anxious. I'm in a place where even if things pile up on top of me and it's a situation where I normally would get anxious, I don't. If I'm stressed, I can think logically, rationally, I can handle everything, I can get everything done, and it's just been incredible. It really has. The change in me can be seen by anyone. Even sitting here talking to you in this way, I was never this coherent. It's been a massive change for me, and I never thought it would be possible with a medication, let alone like one I didn't know any information on, and there weren't many accounts of it online of it being used for anxiety, which was also made even more apparent when I had a medication review a couple of years after, maybe it was 2022, and my GP did a medication review with me and asked why I was on each medication. But when we came to Pregabalin and I said anxiety, he was like, oh, I've never heard of it being used for that before, which to me was very strange, that a GP who must work with tens, hundreds of thousands of people, I don't know how many people, but it's going to be a lot, he'd never come across that before, which was so strange to me. But it's just so effective. It's something that if you haven't ever looked into, you definitely should, because you never know, it could work for you. I would highly recommend doing some research into it, bring it up with your psychiatrist, GP, see if it's an option for you, if things like SSRIs haven't worked for you, or things like benzodiazepines, if they're not really an option, or say they don't want to prescribe it to you, or you've tried them and they weren't really helping you, or you had some negative side effects. I'd give it a go. Now, something to note with Pregabalin is it's technically a restricted substance due to the risk of abuse. Saying that, I've never had any issues. I've been abroad with it. I went with my prescription. My meds weren't even looked at. It wasn't an issue. I didn't have to explain anything or get out my diagnosis letter or prescription or anything like that. It wasn't something that was needed. But be aware that if you first start it, you might only get put on, say, like a weekly prescription and then monthly. I went straight to monthly, but I think it was because of there wasn't really a risk of me abusing it, or sort of like an overdose risk. But you might find that information when you read into things. I'm pretty certain the information is on the link that I'm going to put in the description, but do be aware of that. What side effects have I experienced? For me, the most difficult one was the foggy-headed, spaced out feeling. I didn't feel zombified or drowsy per se, in that it wasn't that I just wanted to go to bed and sleep. I just could not think. Everything felt hazy and foggy. Luckily, I didn't have to drive because I was working from home, because that would have been a disaster and totally dangerous, and I wouldn't have done it anyway, but that would have just been horrific. I could barely get any work done despite the fact I was working at home. I wasn't getting enough done, which I still feel guilty for even now. Maybe that's some residual anxiety there, that it's just playing in the back of my mind. But it's something that was very difficult. It was the most difficult side effect for me. I also was very uncoordinated. I would walk into things a lot. Again, I had that with other medications, so even though I was starting them at different times and they were getting into my system in different ways, it could also be the way that they interacted. I don't know. But it worked so well for me. But it was, apart from that side effect, was the main one for me. I would say that it lasted mostly for 2 to 3 weeks, and then after the 2-3 month part, it completely went. I might have the odd day if I'm tired that I feel it more, and I might feel a little bit foggy, but never in the way that when I started it. It did take me, I think it was 2 weeks before I upped it to the 150 milligrams instead of 75, because I wanted to see if I could tolerate it before it went up. And even though at first I was like, can I tolerate this? Is this working? Is it a bit too much for me? When the side effects started easing off, I thought, no, I can tolerate this. So we'll give 150 a go, and it worked. There were a few other side effects though. The main other one being constipation. In my other 2 videos that I've done in regards to my mental health videos, I have mentioned that I have IBS-C. Now, this means that I'm already prone to constipation and sort of cramping pains and just general unhappy gut feelings. So this definitely exacerbated and aggravated it. but it did wear off to some extent, but I still do, it still is something that affects me, but so is every other medication that I'm on. They all do it for me, and I'm sure if I came off all of them, then the IBS would probably feel a lot happier, but I mentally need all of these medications, so I would not come off them. But other than that, I don't have any real day-to-day side effects. I'm sure if I then missed a dose or stopped taking it, I would certainly feel the anxiety resuming, but I don't. It's great. I can just handle anything now. So if it's not something you've heard of, or you haven't really heard it being used in this way, then I would do some research and give it a go. If you've got any questions, leave them below. I'm not going to make this video too long. I haven't got too much to say on it because it was great for me and it still works. But thank you for watching my video on Pregabalin.